So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to make a motion to open the meeting. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, so we have a second. So let's go ahead and do the pledge. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so first agenda item is just comments from the chair. I don't have anything in particular tonight other than to just, I guess, move into discussing the rest of the process as far as the budget's concerned. So as we discussed last week, we'll have our next and last meeting concerning the budget portion before the budget goes to the warrants on next Wednesday, 6:30, here in Chambers. And you're going to be via Zoom, right, Brian? Or no, or you're not able to make it. I can't remember.
I should be here.
You'll be here in person. You'll be Zoom. I'll be here. You'll be here.
Zoom.
You'll be on Zoom. Okay, that's right. All right, good. Okay. All right, so at that meeting, the intent is that we'll be with Mr. Maresco and Mr. Strope.
Sean Patterson.
No,
Oh.
well, yeah, before,
Sean
Struble.
Strobel.
Strobel. Sorry. Can't.
In Meg.
And Meg, yes. So we'll be going through many of the other budget line items in addition to what we've already reviewed so far and be pushing to get through votes. But before we do that, we'll be meeting with Sean Patterson from the Department of Public Works. Wonderful. So we'll have an opportunity for the board to be able to discuss with him what the DPW's budget, submitted budget looks like. So, okay, so we'll go ahead and we're all set for that. Before we move on with tonight's other agenda, we have a request to approve a deficit spending for the snow and ice account for fiscal year 2025 for the town. Mr. Maresco, could you join us so we can ask you a few questions on this?
Sorry.
So could you walk us through what exactly is being requested?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So under snow and ice is one of the only accounts that the town's able to deficit spend. In order to do deficit spend, you need a vote of the select board, vote of the advisory board. The DPW has expended the $400,000 that was appropriated in the budget. And now, with the rest of the winter going on, there'll still be ice, sanding. We don't know, could be more snow. So under state law, municipal finance law, the advisory board and the select board voted at their meeting on the 23rd, I believe. And now the advisory board would need to vote just to approve the deficit spending.
Okay. All right, and how much is, so you said the budget was 400,000?
400,000.
And so how much have we spent to date?
Probably the 400,000. Just
Okay,
about.
okay, so we're basically at budget. Got it. Any questions?
No, I think this
Well,
happened.
we do that 400 flat every year. Is there a reason we keep it at 400?
Because it's the only account you can deficit spend. So the worst it's ever been since I've been here was in 18. The snow budget went from 400 to $1.7 million.
1.7?
1.7, yeah.
Oh,
We had those 3 bad storms in 18, if you remember correctly. A lot of the money wasn't necessarily snow plowing, but it was icing because we had the severe flooding, Brant Rock and Green Harbor, Wrexham Beach area, Hummerock, all the streets there. You had 4 tides that didn't go out, only a very small portion, so the water backs up, and it was a lot of icing. And then, 2 of those storms had a significant amount of, I think it was the first and the second, but not the third, had a significant amount of snow. So, so the snow and ice is, we have to hire additional contractors also. So we have our own employees and we have our own equipment. But some of the major roads, and when you have those big flooding situations, we have, the DPW has companies on call that they hire, and they're ready at a moment's notice. They're committed to our town, big front-end loaders and, any other type of very large industrial equipment to be able to move the snow, to be able to move the ice, to be able to move water, sand, anything else that comes up from the ocean during those types of storms.
Out of the 400, excuse me, out of the 400,000 that's been spent to date, do you know approximately what percentage of that was for internal expenses, meaning our own DPW folks and trucks and whatnot versus outside contractors?
Yeah, that would be, I can certainly take a stab at it. We have not had the type of significant amount of snow where we had to bring in big outside equipment from other companies. So I'm comfortable saying probably 90% of what was spent out of the snow and ice was spent inside, and probably 10% on bringing in some larger pieces of equipment or something if needed.
Usually, we have to do these on weekends as well, right?
Well, that does run it. So yes, under CBAs, so they get time and a half, and then after so long, they get double time, and then if they're called back within a 24-hour period, after 2 overtime, I think it goes to triple time.
In the motion before the board right now to deficit spend, does that have any kind of a cap on it, or this is?
It doesn't, because they've got it's a public safety issue, so once they get to the ceiling of the 400, then we just keep running a tab, and then at the end of the fiscal year, the treasurer collector and the town accountant will look at, under municipal finance, the last 30 days of the month, when we close out, we can then transfer between expense and personnel to get rid of any red. Hopefully, there'd be enough money left over to be able to close that out. If not, then there's some other options, but, we'll see how big the bill is.
Do we do this often, Mike? I feel like we've done it the last.
Yeah, we didn't have to do it last year, and I don't remember if we had to do anything the year, but we haven't had snow for the last couple of years, so probably not.
Isn't it? Okay.
But it's standard operating procedure, so once they get to the we have to do it before they run out, because we can't have them without money.
Right.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the board?
Nope.
All right. So I'm going to put forth a motion for the board to move to allow the Department of Public Works under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 31 Delta, to deficit spend their snow and ice account for fiscal year '25. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marisco. All right, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, and that's to discuss police, fire, and rescue budgets for fiscal year 2026. So last week, we discussed the budget for the schools, which comprises approximately 50% of our overall town budget. So another mission-critical area of our town is our ability to provide safety and services for that through policing and fire, as well as rescue response. So it goes without saying that these services are absolutely essential to our town, its citizens, and we entrust our public servants in uniform to keep us safe 24/7, 365. So the board's asked Chief Tavares from the Marshfield Police Department and Chief La Selva from the Marshfield Fire Department to join us this evening to help us understand the fiscal year 2026 budget and the operations of the departments that drive the financial requirements of this mission-critical service. Before we jump in, I just want to express how much we appreciate the work that your departments do in keeping our neighborhoods and our community safe. When danger arises, our first responders don't run in the other direction. In fact, they run directly towards the danger. And they often do this at great risk to their own personal safety. And the sacrifices that they make also require, and oftentimes, sacrifices from their families. Late nights, weekends, and we appreciate it all. So you and your teams, I just wanted to say you have our utmost admiration and gratitude for all that you do every second of every day to preserve and protect our community. So thank you to all the men, all of the women of our police and fire departments. We are always, obviously, forever in your debt, so thank you. And I appreciate you being here today. So with our premium on safety, our town spends approximately 12% of our overall town budget on police, fire, and rescue. And that number doesn't sound like a lot, but if you remove schools from the budget, which comprises about 50%, and you take that amount away, then that amount is equivalent to roughly 55% of everything, every dollar that's non-school related. So this is an important piece of it's a very important component of our town in our fiscal health. So I'd like to begin with the police budget. And in order to understand the numbers, it'd be beneficial to first begin with understanding the operations in a little bit of detail. So I'd like to ask Chief Tavares and anyone else that you'd like to join with you, Chief.
Thank you very much. This is on, right? Can
Yes,
you hear
sir.
me? Okay. Thank you very much for having us here tonight. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Phil Tavares. I'm the Chief of Police, and with me is my captain, Michael McDonough. We got on the job together and rose through the ranks together. And I'd also like to thank you for your service in the Marine Corps.
Hoorah.
Thank you.
Semper Fi. All right, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate you being here tonight and spending a little bit with our board here. So I wanted to start off again with asking some basic questions about operational questions, right? To just understand a little bit about what those drivers are that are that impact our budget and what our requests are every year. So I was wondering if you could help walk us through how we measure crime activity in the town of Marshfield, what kind of statistics and metrics we use, and walk a little bit through too in terms of how those metrics, how those statistics have changed over time. You know, I mean, I'm not asking you to go back 20 years or anything, but maybe the last 5, 10 years, just in terms of violent and nonviolent crime, what those trends look like in our town. And we'll start with that.
Okay. First, I'd like to say that for the last 11 years, we've been in the top safest communities in the United States of America with a population of 25,000 or more consecutive years. And last year, we were rated 4th safest in the whole United States. So
4th safest in the United States.
Correct, with a population of 25,000 or more. And that's derived from the raw data from the FBI crime stats for property crimes and violent crimes per capita.
That is amazing.
Thank you.
I'll tell you, I believe for a lot of us, we feel that, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
That's pretty incredible.
So in regards to your question, we have a records management system. It's called IMC. And every call for service or every phone call that comes in is logged. And it's tracked by time of day, day of week, and location. So we're able to track what comes in, where it happens, what time it happens, and we deploy our services to hotspots. We might do saturated patrols, meaning put extra cruisers in that area. We know what day of the week and what times are more susceptible to crime or problems, so we adjust our manning and staffing levels to that. What I mean by that is we don't have the same number of people on every shift 24 hours a day and with 7 days a week. You know, we know that a Friday or Saturday night, obviously, is going to be busier than a Monday or a Tuesday, unless there's Monday Night Football. You never know. But we adjust our manning to that, and that's how we track our stats. So we're able to see trends and deploy our resources to problem areas.
Excellent. Has there been well, I guess you just answered that question. In the last, you said 11 years we've been, had quite the record. Anything that's changed in our policing approach at all in the last 11 years? Or kind of, I'm just curious, how did we get such an amazing record? That's tremendous.
Well, one, we've got a great team, including working with our fire department. Mm-hmm. I believe that we're pretty much in every thread of the fabric of this community. We're really entrenched with the community and community policing. Our police officers our coaches for the youth sports and at the high school level. We belong to the Boys and Girls Club. We're constantly involved with them. We do the Cops Are Kids with Cancer event. We are involved with Marshfield Community Christmas. There's a host of things that we do that brought us close to the community and made people feel comfortable speaking with us and giving us information that could be useful. I believe that we have a good team in place. And also, I have subscribed to the same philosophy as Chief Sullivan. So in the last almost 41 years, there's only been 2 police chiefs. So we've had stability and consistency with the same philosophy. And, we believe in excellence. So we strive towards that, and that's how people get promoted, and that's how people get their specialty positions, is they need to do well, real well, and we've got all the right people in the right places. How have things changed? Things have changed pretty drastically just in the last 5 years. As you can remember, there were protests that went on during COVID. The police were looked at as the enemy at that time, it was just a switch like this because during the beginning of COVID, the police and fire were the heroes. We were going around, the kids were trapped in their houses, we were doing birthday party parades, going by their houses with the fire trucks and police cars, and then there was an incident that happened that changed that view of police officers all over our country for an incident that happened in another state. As a result of that, the state established the POST system, Police Officers Standard Training. And in reference to that, we're required to do all kinds of new training on a yearly basis, which has increased our costs, but it's good training, so we're always in favor of that. We've also been working towards national certification and accreditation. We developed 159 new policies and procedures, and all of our police officers have been trained on those. And we're continuing to put the best police policies and practices in place on a national standard. So, some other things that have happened, there's been some other changes in the law in regards to juvenile laws. Not as many juveniles, they raised the age from 17 to 18. They eliminated crimes that juveniles could be arrested for in the past and charged with. So that's affected the juvenile crime rates. But overall, in the last 10 years, our numbers from everything from the amount of disturbances, the amount of arrests, the amount of car accidents, it's been pretty much almost always the same, very similar.
The training, you said that there's been a lot of training that's implemented in the last 5 years, and it sounded, if I heard you correctly, Chief, that it was a lot of it was derived from state law that was pushing it down. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. The POST standard, Police Officer Standard Training. That is now.
Was that something that had always existed and they just beefed it up, or is that new?
It had never existed in Massachusetts prior. It had existed in some other states. I believe it's a good system. It's similar to teachers. They have to be certified, and if there's a problem professionally with them, they can become decertified. We never had that in Massachusetts, so a problem police officer could go from one department to the next, to the next, to the next. But now the state is certifying police officers, and they will decertify you so that you can't move on to another department. So it's essential for professionalism, and it's an unfunded mandate.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about that next in terms of, is the state funded any of that, or they just put the requirement down and we got to fund it?
They put the requirement down, and it's cost us approximately $250,000 to $300,000 each year since then.
Okay. In your opinion, it sounds like those impacts, or I shouldn't say those impacts, that certification, that training has been beneficial to the department?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
In regards to one of the other questions that you had asked earlier, was there anything else that's happened? Although the crime rates have remained pretty much the same, there's been an increase in calls for service due to the town growing in the last 10 years.
The 159 policies and procedures, is that just in the last, since this post-training went into effect? Is that when all of that,
Yes, that's correct.
really?
New ones. And we're coming out with even more. We're going to have approximately 247 total.
The calls for service increase, you said is related to the increase in population. Has the pace of which the calls have increased stayed with the pace of the increase in population, like on a per capita, or as the population's gotten bigger, has the per capita number changed?
Okay, so it's a little difficult to determine without doing a full analysis on it.
Sure.
But obviously, there's been a lot more building going on. Complex that was built up the street. We do get a lot of calls for service there. But what we've seen since COVID is a dramatic increase in calls for service for mental health cases. Fortunately, through the support of the town, we have a full-time, well, hopefully soon to be a full-time mental health clinician working for us. We're able to get her on a grant, and we had to split her. She's in Marshfield 3 days a week, 1 day in Duxbury and 1 day in Norwell. We could use somebody like her on every shift for what we're dealing with these days. A dramatic increase.
Can you give us a little bit of, I guess, little, what's the word I'm looking, a little color on that? Like, what is so more mental health related calls? What does that mean for those of us not in the policing community?
It could be anything from somebody feeling depressed to somebody that's suicidal, somebody that is exhibiting delusional behavior, paranoid schizophrenia, people that desperately need help. And instead of going into the criminal justice system, we're shipping them off to a hospital or a facility where they can get that treatment, and we're offering follow-up services for them and their families.
So before COVID and before some of these changes in the certification, was it the case that they were just dealt with in the policing system here as far as being detained and that sort of thing, and they weren't pushed to a hospital? Or
No. So the police can do, under Chapter 123, Section 12, commonly known as the pink slip. That's if somebody's a danger to themselves or others. We have the ability to take them against their will. It's not criminal. And bring them, obviously, the fire department works with us, to the hospital to be evaluated. So that was one option. We also had the option of the family crisis hotline, where we could utilize them for services as well. And you see, oftentimes we've had issues, just like every other town, with opioid overdoses and the effects of that. And lots of times those people are suffering from mental illness and they are self-medicating. So between well-being checks and mental health calls, there's a huge increase.
so yeah, I was curious about that. Is the mental health calls, are you seeing that a lot of them are related to substance abuse or abuse that's tied into it, or is it kind of ranges the gambit?
I think there's a big range.
Yeah.
There's lots of different reasons for it, but we have found that people that are suffering from mental illness are self-medicating with either alcohol or drugs, oftentimes.
Sorry. Are neighboring communities, are they having the same?
Yes, they are. And we have meetings. We belong to the Plymouth County Hub, Plymouth County Outreach. So we know from the mental health case side to the overdose side, if somebody overdoses here in Marshfield, we pump that into the Plymouth County system, and everybody knows about it. And if one of our residents overdoses in another community, we're notified of that as well, so that we can provide the follow-up services, because otherwise we wouldn't know about it. So everybody within Plymouth County is working together on the mental health cases and the substance abuse cases.
Have you noticed any change in the numbers, or, like, has it decreased, or?
So the mental health cases have increased, but the amount of overdose fatalities has decreased, as well as the number of overdoses. And there could be a lot of reasons for that. One could say that the problem's getting better, or another view could be that Narcan is readily available out there and in homes, and people are getting treated without notifying us.
Okay. Are you noticing that having the mental health counselor, social worker with you or with someone, is that making a difference too? Do you think that-
Absolutely game-changing.
Really?
She's tremendous, absolutely tremendous.
De-escalating and,
Yeah, that's part of post two, is that we have to spend a lot more time on scene, de-escalating situations, which takes up time. But she goes along, she has a bullet-resistant vest. She goes on the calls with us. She de-escalates along with the officers, because we have special officers that are crisis intervention trained, and try to slow everything down, calm everybody down, de-escalate the situation. But she's been tremendous.
it's great.
So you said she's basically 3/5 to Marshfield.
Yes.
What would be the cost to have, like, one, would there be the need for a full-time? And two, what would be the additional cost for have some?
I think that's in the budget this year.
Yeah, that is, so, yes, it would be great not only to have her, but a whole staff of people like her, because we're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's a difficult caseload for one person, but having her here 5 days a week will be a huge benefit to us, and that's already asked for this year.
Excellent.
Because again, that we got her on a grant, and there's with the MBTA communities, we don't know if that grant's going to be available again.
But that's now permanently part of our budget, in the budget request going forward for,
It's a request, yes.
2026. Great.
We heard a similar conversation with the school department where, the pupil population has gone down, but the behavioral staff has gone up. Is there any opportunity to do any synergy with the school department with their resources on this?
Well, first,
Supplement the lack of resources?
so we applied for a grant quite a few years back for $250,000 from the state, and it put 2 full-time school resource officers in the schools. We already had 1 full-time at the high school. Then we were able to put 1 full-time at the middle school, and there's 5 elementary schools, so we have another officer that goes 1 day a week at each of the 5 elementary schools. So those police officers, along with other police officers, work with the schools on a daily basis. They teach in some of the health classes, after-school programs. There's a criminal justice program. But in regards to the mental health cases, the officers are aware of what's going on in the parents' homes, and they have that information available that might be able to assist treatment with the child.
And I realize that we only have one individual right now that's the mental health professional, but what are we doing on the side of online monitoring and online safety and whatnot to obviously safety of the community can be interrelated with how people are, online. And I'm not talking about somebody expressing their opinion online. I mean, like, people expressing very extreme, behaviors, worrisome behaviors that obviously threaten the safety of people in the town or at school or wherever, right? How are we dealing with that?
Yeah, so essentially, when somebody does that, whether they send it just to a friend or they put it out publicly, which has happened in both cases numerous times, we usually get notified.
Okay.
And then we, obviously, if we have to do a well-being check, if we have to do a criminal investigation, if we have to notify the schools, if we have to make a referral to the mental health clinician, we do a full-blown out investigation on it.
And are there individuals within the police department that are that specialize in that online component of it, or is that something?
Oh, we have a forensic computer lab and a forensic computer, I don't know if I'd call him an expert, but professional that does that. We're able to do deep dives and do search warrants on cell phones and computers and all kinds of stuff. Additionally, if anything pops that we don't catch, the FBI does watch that, and they do notify us, and they have numerous times.
I had another question for you on the. Oh, then I wanted to ask you about the national accreditation and certification. Is that something that we took on as a town because we wanted to, or was that by choice, I guess is the question, or was that a state requirement?
That is strictly voluntary,
Okay.
but it increases transparency and reduces liability, and it ensures that we are obeying by the best policies and practices in the business. And I think that's important for our police department, but also for the services to our citizens. So it's strictly voluntary, and I had been speaking with the staff, and they've wanted to do it for quite some time as well. However, with the old building we had, there had to be a number of different structural changes to the building because it wasn't in compliance with the state law. It was grandfathered, but it wouldn't meet the criteria for, from the evidence room to pretty much everything else. So it's strictly voluntary, but it produces excellent results.
How much are we, it sounds like as far as where we stand in terms of safety in the town is pretty amazing. Do you have any idea how much we spend on average per citizen for policing?
I do, and it depends on how you want to look at it, because our population fluctuates in the summer. So our population year-round is 27,000. In the summer, it could swell between 42 and 45,000. So if you take that and you take our budget and you look at it per capita for per resident, you'll find that based on the 27,000 population, it costs $277 per person. Based on the 45,000, it's $161 per person.
And how does that compare against statewide averages? Do you know how that compares, or other South Shore communities?
So I don't know for sure. I can tell you that the staffing levels change whether you're in a suburban or urban, a city or a suburb, or out west, where the population is not as high as ours, and the demands for service aren't as high as ours. So, but if you took the national average, which I haven't looked at it in a while, but it's 2.54 officers per 1,000. So that would staff us at approximately 68 officers. We're currently staffed at 49. The town of Braintree, they have the mall, and they're busy. Their population's 38,000, and they have 89 officers, but they're hoping to be budgeted for 101. And their population is only 38,500.
What is the staffing increase in the summertime?
Well, we keep our staffing levels the same.
It would just summertime, more directed patrol, and others will task the guys like Burke's Beach, out-of-town residents, that type of thing, sorry. Areas that just, cause more problems. Always in the beginning, we have 2 or 3 officers that are down at Burke's Beach. People come down, we inform them, there's no drinking on the beach, that type of thing. If you like to put your cooler away, go down, have a good time. But usually if we get a hold of that, because it's a lot of out-of-town people that go to Burke's Beach, especially younger kids, and same things, like, Wrexham Beach. There's certain areas around town that are going to be busier, so we'll direct patrol that way to address those problems. We've both been here a long time, so you see those trends.
Yep.
And especially everyone down in the beach areas on vacation. So they're looking to have a little more fun.
When we started together over 31 years ago, it was quiet here in the winter, and the staffing levels could go down, and then they would increase in the summer. But we're busy year-round now, so.
Is it a lot more overtime in the summer, I'm assuming, in the summer months? Because it's more daylight hours, more
Yeah,
more activity, more people?
And also, it's a nice time to take vacation, so replacement.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I just, real quick, I remembered the question I wanted to ask around mental health. And forgive me if maybe the answer is obvious and I'm just missing it, but you said there's been obviously markedly sizable increase in the amount of mental health related calls. What's driving it? I mean, what's going on out? I mean, I get that there's
I-
challenges and
Yeah.
whatnot, and I remember during COVID that there was obviously a lot of folks that were having a very difficult time because of isolation and things like that. But I'm just curious, like in the last few years, what's driving it? What do you think?
Well, I mean, it'd be my personal opinion.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is that there's a lot of anxiety since COVID, coupled with the political atmosphere and the economy. And, I'm sure you've heard, we're on the verge of World War III, and, some restaurants have closed and different things. People have lost their jobs. A lot of divorces happened as a result of the anxiety and different things. So I think that there's not one particular thing, but there's a number of different things that come into play here. But that's just my personal opinion, just based on what I hear and what I see.
Oh, thank you. Be curious to, maybe obviously not here tonight, but I'd be curious to learn more about what you think the future looks like. It's obviously what you mentioned, I think, is a concern across the
I think
world.
that's a national issue,
Yeah, and a global, yeah, exactly.
a global.
How many officers do we have on the force right now?
49.
49 officers. And what's the average turnover look like, annual turnover?
So that's another difficult question to ask. If an officer stays, if they come on the job early enough and they stay 32 years, then they get a full retirement. So they'd have to work here 32 years. We have a younger police department now, so I would say the average time on the job would be 10 to 15 years. But as far as turnover, if there's not a retirement, we have lost a number of officers to the state police, to the Weymouth Police, and to other police departments.
What's the biggest driver for folks going to other police departments?
Salary and health insurance.
Can you expand on that?
The town of Marshfield only has 50/50 health insurance, so it's a substantial cost to the employee, where other cities or towns have a better rate for the employee or a better salary. And in some cases, it might be just a larger department with more opportunity. But primarily what I've heard is it's about money.
So is that, are we lower than than other?
50/50 is the lowest you can go.
No, I'm talking salary. Salary lower in Marshfield than it is in?
It had been, but it's not lower now. I'm not sure where we fall in the pack.
And when you say 50/50, just to make sure I'm crystal clear, 50/50 means the town pays for half of their health coverage and the individual pays for the rest.
Correct.
And obviously, when you're talking family plans and whatnot, the cost can be pretty substantial.
That's right.
And that's just the monthly cost as opposed to, if you have a big event and a high hospital bill, they would have different deductibles and all that as well, right?
Yes. So the health insurance comes out every 2 weeks.
Are our officers, they're union, part of a union,
Yes, sir.
police union, and when does their CBA, when did it start, when does it expire?
It expires July 1st, 2025, so this July. So it was a 3-year contract. So it would have went into effect July 1st of 2022. Correct.
Yeah, July 1 of 2025 is the last year of the contract. So the men and women have a raise for July 1.
Yeah.
And so June 30th of 2026.
Yeah.
The contract will
Excuse me.
expire.
Oh, okay, so it expires next year?
Yes.
Got it.
Thank you.
One question back to what we were just talking about. If somebody changes moves from town to town, when it comes to pension, do they lose their seniority? So if they were here for 10 years and then they're going to go to Duxbury or wherever,
They could just roll their pension into the other community.
It's part of the state system, so.
And do you know approximately what percentage of our force lives in the town?
I do. 90%.
90%?
90?
Correct.
All right.
It's outstanding.
You have to be a resident in Marshfield for 1 year prior to taking the exam. So we're primarily we're picking our residents, and they seems to stay.
Is that unusual compared to other towns?
Yeah, other towns don't have, some other towns don't have the residential requirement. We're a civil service community, and we do have residential preference. There's some communities that don't have that. There's lots of communities that have come out of civil service. They can't get enough residents to sign up for the exam, so they'll pick them from all over the state. Fortunately, here, there is a demand for the job from Marshfield residents, and we've had quality people apply for those.
So what's the average, I mean, when you do have to go out and hire a new officer, how long does it take on average to find somebody to fill that spot?
So it takes a number of months to get the paperwork in order, to get a medical exam, a physical exam, and do all that stuff. Then there's a wait for the academy. Then they go to the academy for 6 months. Upon graduation from the academy, they go for a 3-month ride-along program with another officer where it's a ride, they're learning the job. And then, so it takes about a year.
Okay. But I mean, the time that we find, do we have a waiting list to get onto the department right now, or?
Yes, well, there's a civil service list of all the current candidates.
Okay.
It's it was put out by the state, and there's a number of, starts with residents, and then it goes to non-residents.
Approximately how many retirements and people leaving do you have a year? Do you have I'm sure it's different, but is there an average?
Well, it fluctuates. There isn't really any average. Sometimes there's none. Sometimes there could be 2 or 3.
Do we outsource any of our policing functions to other communities, or is we pretty self-sustainable?
So to answer that question properly, Boston, Worcester, and Springfield are the only cities that it's not in the state law that the state police are in charge of death investigations. So here in Marshfield, they are. We work with them, but they are the primary on it. So if there's a homicide or a suspicious death, the state police come in and work with us. The second part of that question would be like mutual aid stuff. And we do call on the Sheriff's Department, the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department, to provide mutual aid for traffic details and for their criminalistics unit to do fingerprinting and photographs.
And what's I guess the other question I'd have is, what's the morale like on the department? I mean, it sounds like you got a pretty good record, and a lot of people live in town, which is great. Obviously, it speaks to the fact that they love their community, which is fantastic, and aligns with the whole community policing methodology and whatnot. But how's the morale within the department, and how does that compare to prior years?
Well, let's go back to what I was speaking about earlier, when the protests were in place, and we were the bad guys. Morale was really low. Mine was low. In fact, I wouldn't even encourage anybody to take the job at that point, because it just wasn't worth it. Fast forward, we have a brand-new building. We have excellent people. We have the support of our community, unlike some other places in the country. And people are happy to be at work. We have our pulse on it. The supervisors check with everyone on a daily basis and check in with everyone. We have pretty much an open door to come on in if there's an issue. We don't have any complaints filed against us. We don't have any abuse of sick time. We don't have anybody out injured on duty. We turn back money every year because everybody's with the program. And they understand that it's a team approach. And they're active. They're doing their job, and they do it well. So, in my opinion, the morale is excellent. Yeah, oh yeah, there hasn't been any grievances in 30 years.
30 years?
30 years, no union grievances. And the union president's right there. Right, he was there. He got called out.
I wish I had something like that in my career.
No MCAD complaints, no ethics complaints, nothing.
Wow.
That's great.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. And you mentioned a little bit of what you do in order to make sure that you're engaging with the officers in our department to make sure that they're happy, healthy, et cetera. What kind of services do we offer to our officers, especially along the lines of mental health, to ensure that they're prepared, that they're ready, but more importantly, that they're okay? Especially being, I'm sure that a lot of what they have to deal with can be frightening and disturbing, and on just a personal level aside from the job.
Yeah.
If I add a little on to that.
Yeah, please.
The only budget question I had was on the training side, obviously, it's a 70% increase. Maybe some of this answer is part of this training budget increase.
Okay, I'll answer that question first, and then,
Yeah, please.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
might be some relation.
okay, sure, no problem. So we do have a fitness incentive in the contract to make officers want to be healthy and adhere to the best standards for push-ups, set-ups, the mile-and-a-half run. So there is a fitness incentive in the contract. The town has always offered the employee assistance program. After any critical incident, we make it mandatory that they go to a critical stress debriefing with a mental health clinician and trained officers, and that's confidential. Whatever gets discussed there is confidential. And then one of the other things that
Sorry to interrupt you. When you say confidential, you mean that information's not coming back to
correct.
a hiring and firing sort of anybody within the
Strict-
HR group, so to speak.
Correct. It's strictly confidential. I don't even know what happens in there. But I'm proud to say that we recently started a new app on that all the officers can download onto their phone. It's called The Guide, and it's for mental health and wellness. And every officer and their family members are allowed to download it as well. It's a minimal cost, and we're the first police department in the state of Massachusetts to have it. So I have it on my phone now. It provides training, confidential counseling, referrals, tips, all kinds of stuff. It's fantastic.
That's great, and I applaud the fact that you're investing time and resources in the mental health of your folks that are being trained to go out and assist other people with their mental health issues, and I think that's pretty fantastic and speaks well to the department. I wanted to ask you one other question on the operational side, and one other question on the operational side, and that was just in regards to our fleet. So obviously we have 49 officers. I'm sure we probably have quite a few cruisers and other vehicles. So I was just had a few questions in relation to that. How many cruisers do we have, or is it more appropriate to ask you how many vehicles we have in general?
So I believe we have approximately 14 marked vehicles and 11 unmarked vehicles.
For the whole force, that's what we
Correct.
got it. What's the average life of a cruiser or of one of those vehicles?
Yeah, a marked cruiser, the lifespan is 2 years, because you got to remember they run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and they're 160,000 in 2 years.
Okay.
And then the admin vehicles would last twice as long, maybe 4 or 5 years.
And the repairs and gasoline expenses, how is that all dealt with? Is that a DPW resource, or how does that?
Partially. The DPW, yes, the gas comes from the DPW. The DPW does our maintenance and some repairs. If it's a factory issue, the vehicles will go back to the factory. And if it's a specialty thing, we've often used Lucetti Service Center here in town. I didn't get a chance
go
to
ahead. Sorry.
answer your question. I'm sorry.
But, no, I thought when he asked that question about what we're doing for mental health, and on the budget item, the training, we talked about post-training, but also the training budget's gone up significantly for next year. And I thought there was things like the app or the costs and so forth was part of that.
No, that
Earlier, about $250,000 a year for post-training, and we're showing about 260 or 260.
that's what that's for. It's for the post training.
The increase in
Yes.
the budget, it's all post?
Yes.
What does that mean, post-training? I'm sorry.
Police officer standard training, it's the unfunded mandate.
So that hasn't been something that's already been in effect, or comes into effect this year, or?
No, it's been in effect, but it's always been a supplement to our budget. It's never been actually part of the budget until this year.
Ah, okay. In a supplement, so where would that have been in the budget?
It's been a supplement every year for the past quite a few years.
Meaning
It was
that,
117 last year, and it's 380 this year.
right, yeah, no, that's what I knew, yeah, it's a 70% increase versus last year's appropriation, so,
When you say supplement, that'd be something that's addressed during the year?
Yes.
April
just
or
kinda
fall
like-
town meeting.
okay, got it,
But it
it's a
was-
separate
Right.
article.
I mean, I handle more of the budget things.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Megan and Sean are new to us, and they are looking towards line item budgeting. So sometimes when you look at these line items, that's not the way it had been done in the past. They are striving for that, more transparency on the line items. So for example, I think there was a question about the part-time guys. Why was it so high? It's just the utilization of those, and we're categorizing things better. In other words, all training falls under that training overtime line item now, as opposed to court or regular shift overtime. So we can track that better for post and those types of things. So I think moving forward, all our line items are going to be much more, on target. And, these guys are new. There's been some turnover in the treasurer collector and accountant's office. So I think moving forward, we're all on the same page with those things. But, in fairness to everyone, there's been some growing pains the last few years with some of these
Just
things.
got to get off your multiple finance systems and work on one.
Yeah. So,
So just curious, so 24, it was 415,000 roughly, right? And then this past year, the appropriation was 117, and now it's 384. Is that right? Is that?
it is,
Okay.
because like I said, the money gets appropriated either in April and then it has to be transferred into our budget
Okay.
to offset. But if you look at the historical spending, it's pretty close. I mean, same thing with, overtime. You're actually, with the contracts, now we're through 2 contract cycles, and when you look at the money spent, we're actually having fewer overtime hours. It's just with 6 years of raises and those types of things, the cost per hour goes up. So I think the guys have been doing a great job keeping that stuff under control as far as that. But the way we operate, don't forget, it's 24/7. So for us to send people to training, it's always during the day. So if I take someone off midnight, you still got to replace them. So there's moving parts with that. Like I said, we've both been at it for 12 years together, so it's good. But the reason you might see some difference in the line items is it was never tracked line item before. We kind of looked at salaries a big pot of money and expenses a big pot of money.
Yeah, and now that you mention it, I do recall that it's been coming up consistently at town meeting where it's another item that is in addition to, aside from the budget, so this includes it in it. Yeah, and you bring up a good point too, that, yeah, given the type of work that you do, if you put somebody into training, it's not just the cost of the training,
It's
it's
replacement.
the cost of replacing that person for
Right.
that shift.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And everyone's got to travel for training, basically.
sure.
So is that the coverage, the overtime coverage or straight time coverage for the people that are on training? Is that in that line item? I mean, similar to vacation coverage, it's the same thing.
Vacation coverage would be basically overtime. I mean, training is strictly training, whether it's replacing the guy or not. Shift overtime is driven by manning and number of guys off, like, per contract, 2 guys can be off per
So
shift.
I think you answered, the
Yeah.
cost for someone, the salary cost to cover somebody away at training is in the training line item.
Right, and there's been a desire to, lock that down a little bit tighter, and that's why you see more stuff under training as opposed to, shift overtime. We're really trying to dial that in for the planning part of budgeting, to see what it really vets out as totally, because that's not the way we used to do it. There wasn't as much concern about line item per se as total budget.
Okay? Thank you.
So this is a good transition point, because to talk a little bit about the budget now. Who prepares the budget? Is it you? Is it somebody from Town Hall? Or what's the process?
It's a
How does it-
collaborative effort, the chief and I.
Okay.
Sean, Meg, Michael. We sit down and obviously, you first walk in, you have your dream list, and then we kind of, vet out from there what are priorities, what aren't. A big thing is 2021, we got an SRO grant. And when the current board and people were there, the goal was always to incorporate that into our budget. We still have not done that, so we run the SRO program.
SRO is School Resource Officer.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah.
As it's under us, but it's a subset. So it's a little bit different, because if you remember the last 3 years, we've been going back to town meeting for approximately $300,000.
And whose budget is that in now, this year? Is it?
It's under us, but it's still in the grant account. Because when the grant was first started, we got 250, the town had to match 250.
Okay. But we're not paying for it with a grant going forward, is that right? It's being paid for from the town?
Yes, the grant is done. The grant was just two payments, $100,000 and $150. But that's been over for 3+ years.
And that's not part of the school's budget?
The schools pay 80% of our officer in the high school,
Okay.
and we pay 20%.
No, the other way around.
No, the schools pay 80%.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah, schools pay 80%, we pay 20%
Okay.
for the high school. The two middle school and the elementary, the police town pays for those two offices. But there's also other things involved in that, like
That
they go
isn't
to.
part of the, sorry to interrupt you, how come that isn't part of the school's budget?
Years ago, they did not contribute, but for what, about 10 years? They've
Michael's-
paid, oh, sorry, Michaels.
It's a public safety issue, so the whole intent of that grant was public safety. The schools, I think they paid, and the captain can correct me, I think they paid 9 months on the high school one, and the town picks up the other 3 months. It was the police department in consultation with the select board to go after that SOR grant, because the way the world was changing, we really needed to, it made sense to have offices, certainly to have an officer inside the middle school. If they had their way, would love to have an officer dedicated to each of the elementary schools. Right now, we have an officer at the elementary school that fluctuates, but there's coverage at least one day a week in each of those schools. And because it was a priority that way, it's vested with the police. It's more of a policing activity than an education activity.
And I just wanted to segue back to you, Paul, when you had asked before, like our SROs, if there's a call outside of like the school day, those SROs are notified when they go into school that day. They talk to whether it's the guidance counselor or whatever else, and they coordinate that care, whatever it may be. So, and the SROs just don't go to school that day. They also go to parent-teacher conferences. They'll go to a band recital. They'll go to football games. So they're really involved in that. And we also have an officer, like, it's a liaison to the Boys and Girls Club. So if they're at an event or something like that, the officer will go up, partake in those events. Same thing with the Carolina Hill Shelter and things like that. We have officers assigned to other outreach areas as well as part of their regular responsibilities.
Okay. I guess I get the, I get why it started off being budgeted as an item in the police department's budget, but I still don't understand why it hasn't been shifted over to the school's budget. That part's still lost on me. I mean, if it was somebody from the police department that went and spent 20% of their time over at the schools, I'd get it. It's like, okay, it's kind of like an ancillary duty, but if I understand correctly, the school resource officer spends nearly 100% of their time at the school.
Yes.
And it's for the safety of the students, right?
Yes.
So then it's
Yeah, there was a change in the role from the DARE officer that was there that taught classes about self-esteem and stress and bullying and so on and so forth. But since Columbine, that role has changed to more safety and security. And the school department's done a wonderful job with their health department picking up the curriculum that we used to do in the DARE program. The health department at the schools currently do that. So our role has changed to primarily safety and security as opposed to education.
So are the school resource officers something that the police would like to have in the schools, or is that, does the school, I'm just curious, does the school request that the police, I mean, where did, you said it's as a result of the,
Yeah, so
the police?
So I would say that we're very fortunate that the school department supports the police in the schools, and we feel that it's essential to have them in the schools. Coming from the police end, those are very soft, vulnerable targets, and we've seen terrible acts across the country happen. And it would be negligent on my part, I believe, if we didn't advocate to have the police officers in the schools.
Yeah, and certainly, I don't think there's any disagreement with having a school resource officer. I'm just trying to understand from like a pure budgetary, like, process standpoint, why it's with one and the other. Unless the answer is you telling me that the town has requested, it's not the schools that are asking for the SRO. Who's?
I believe that the town and the schools are in full support of full staffing of police in the schools, all schools.
And again, I understand that. I don't understand why. I guess one of the reasons I'm asking is because when we had schools here last week, their costs just continue to climb, like everybody's costs, right? But they have some unique challenges, I think, coming forward in terms of the sustainability of their budget and how that's handled and whatnot. And that's up to them to figure out how to deal with that. But it makes it hard to really know what the actual true attributable cost is to running the schools if we have things like this. Because I'm imagining there's probably other things too that are being accounted for separately than where they're actually, then who's benefiting from it, right? I shouldn't say it like that, not who's benefiting, but who's using it, right? We all benefit,
Right.
but who's using it, right?
I understand, yes.
Okay. Again, it's just a process question. No,
Yeah, sure.
I have kids in school. I appreciate you guys are there, and I hope you always are. Is there anything that's not in the budget that you feel that in the budget currently, budget request that you feel that should be there?
Well, sure.
The big issues, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, that currently with Entergy, the power plant, they used to provide money to the EOC, to the town. There's currently litigation going on with that. The issue for us is we still need to provide the services, but they have not given any money to the EOC in
2019.
2019.
Sorry, EOC?
Emergency Operations Center, whether they run storms, all the events like Levitate, any disaster, any
Civil.
townwide, civil defense.
This is a group within the Marshfield Police
No, it's
Department?
Lieutenant Shaw, who's at the police department, oversees that.
Okay.
So that is under the police department.
Okay, so whenever you have something, like, I wouldn't say extraordinary, but something outside of the normal day-to-day festivals, other things, this is the group that stands up and handles that?
Yeah, major storms, disasters, floods, blizzards, power outages,
Okay.
major power outages.
Got it.
In other words, things that were funded out of the EOC are no longer, we had to absorb that under the police budget.
And when you say funded out of the EOC, if the EOC is your people, where
It's a
was the
separate budget that was always funded by money from Entergy.
Okay, so Entergy was providing the money for that.
Correct, yes.
that item. And so Entergy's, you're saying, has left?
They stopped paying.
They
They're-
stopped.
Well, it's actually,
Yeah,
You mean they stopped
so-
paying?
So basically, there's a dispute between the original contract that was signed. We believe that we're still owed the funds, but Holtec is the decommissioning company that's decommissioning, or has decommissioned the nuclear power plant, but there's still nuclear material on site in dry cast storage, so it still poses significant problems for us. So we believe that as long as they hold an operating license, that they need to continue to pay us contractually. So we're suing them, and it is in litigation right now. So they provided all the funding to us for the Emergency Operations Center so that we're able to do all this outside the town budget, outside, this is a grant every year that was paid to us.
So it was a grant. What was that grant? What was the amount of that grant?
Yeah, the grant originally started off at $25,000, but it had a 10% inflation rate every year moving forward. So the last year, they should have paid us, they should have owed us about $500,000 for the year, and then it would have went up 10% and 10% and 10%. So
So the last grant payment was up $500,000
approximately.
approximately? Okay.
How long has it been since they've paid their bill?
They haven't paid since 2019.
And that's been in litigation since then?
No, I'm not sure how long is it? 2 years? 2 years.
$500,000
Well,
a year.
Plus
Plus inflation and, yeah.
yeah, we're talking millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars that they should owe us in the future.
How does that relate to events? I think you said levitate. How are those two are correlated?
The grant agreement is not only for nuclear preparedness, it's for any type of civil defense, from the storms to, that's a major target. Large crowds of people, the safety and security of them. So all of that stuff was covered under the grant agreement. Pretty much everything we do is civil defense. Homeland Security is the new name for civil defense.
Okay.
And if you were to tally up the cost of what you spend on those things, is it about the 500,000, more or less?
It depends on what we have going on, but you're talking probably 300,000 to 400,000 a year, probably.
If Entergy just went away tomorrow, I don't know, just disappeared, would we still have the same needs from the EOC? Would that change at all?
No, it wouldn't change at all. Like I said, there's still nuclear material on site that poses a significant danger to the town, could pose a significant danger to the town of Marshfield. So not just, when the contract was signed, it's not just for the nuclear portion, it's for all civil defense.
We have, a part of the EOC is, I'm guessing, but tell me if I'm wrong here, that there's training and other things that are required.
There's lots of training, there's lots of volunteers. It's a major operation that the fire department's part of it as well. It's a major operation.
You have a center still?
Correct, yeah, the new emergency operations center is attached within the new police station.
So the budget concern is there's a risk if there was, I know we have scheduled events that cost some extra to man, like levitate, but the concern on the budget side is if there's a catastrophic event.
Well, for example, like we're a member of MetroLec, which is a regional SWAT team. They have the expertise to respond for a hostage situation or something like that. We have a couple of offices that are members of that. So if those events do happen, but on the other side, for like when Boston has the marathon and those type of events, they call out Metro as well. So those resources will go there, as well as, other things that would be done into that.
We're still required to keep up with our training, even though they're not paying us, and there's a cost to that, associated with that. And the equipment we need.
I hope we're able to resolve that soon and to our favor.
Me too.
So that's troubling to say the least. Anything else that's not in the budget that you believe that should be here? Or is this pretty, does this pretty
We already
well?
talked about the SROs, but no, I think when you look at the increase in our budget, that's also including 3 years of raises in that budget, because the previous years, we got about 2.6% raise or 2.9 on our budget. So we were kind of absorbing contractual increases and things in our budget.
And I'm sorry, what are you saying about this budget versus the prior year budgets? As far as,
I think the team is looking to fully fund all obligations as best they can.
are we not fully funding them now? I'm sorry, I might be.
Well, no, just like the SRO and those types
Oh,
of
got it,
programs.
okay. Okay. So the town, as you know, has been suspended in its participation of 17 grant programs as a result of the MBTA dispute. Are any of those grants going to impact us in fiscal year 2026 as it stands currently?
So I think all grants are at risk,
Yep.
and I'm not sure exactly what the state's going to do, but annually, we're looking at over $250,000 approximately for state 911. We have a $100,000 grant that we received from the state that hasn't been distributed to us because we have to spend it and then get reimbursed. I'm concerned, and that has to do with mental health. I'm concerned that we might not get reimbursed for that. A sub-department of the police department is the harbor master department, and there's $261,000 for dredging of the North and South River, which is it's a public safety hazard to traverse through the shoals there. So people come and go there all the time. So those are grants that off the top of my head. But the state 911 grant is every year. We rely on that.
Was that $261,000 already, was that something that was happening toward the end of the year, I think?
It was awarded, but then
And then it was,
it's held.
Can I just go back to the SROs? I take it you came to the first budget conversations having an officer for every school? Was that in your request originally, or?
That's the goal for the future. So taking the team approach, we realize we can't have everything we want all at once. So when the town's in a better financial position, that would be a goal, and plans have been talked about as to putting that in place. But not right now.
forgive this question, I'm just curious. I love the SRO, I think it's awesome. Elementary schools, the need for an SRO in every school, every day, is it just because of the community? I'm not
So,
recognizing.
yeah, no, that's okay. So they're also, it's important to develop relationships with children at a young age and show them that the police are the good guys and have them comfortable around the police. And additionally, I mean, Sandy Hook was an elementary school. Anything can happen anywhere at any time, and we're risk managers, and we know that. And, you know, I don't want to say too much publicly, but about safety and security with schools, but it's a concern. Unfortunately, it's a major concern.
No, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, as we talked about before, the obviously safety is a major. The police department's a major component of our budget. It's in the fiscal year 2026 budget. There's nearly a 9% increase above the current year appropriations, which is about triple the increase realized by most other departments. Can you help us understand the main drivers for this increase? I think if I heard you correctly, most of it is coming from, which, as Paul had alluded to or spoke about earlier, it's in the it's in training and then incentives. And the training, I understand, if I understand correctly, that's because we're now taking something that was being funded outside of the budget. It's being folded into the budget now. So that would explain that. So we shouldn't see that popping up as an additional line item on the town meeting resolutions there. But the incentives, can you walk us through that briefly?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, incentives.
Yeah, so the incentives is,
Education, police, it says it's line.
Oh, that's all contractual. Those are contractual obligations.
the incentive education. So it's fiscal year 2026 request is 825,000. I'm rounding here. This year's appropriation was nearly 700,000. So almost a $140,000 increase, about 17%. So what is that?
More officers are seeking higher levels of education, and contractually, we're obligated to pay them.
Higher levels of education is in college education?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Based on an associate's, a bachelor's, and a master's degree.
How many of our officers, I mean, just percentage-wise, you don't have to give me an exact number, but have college degrees?
Most of them.
Really?
All but 4.
Wonderful.
Yep.
That's great.
And part of this last contract, we had a dual system. Older people like myself and other officers, it was all under the Quinn bill. But new guys didn't get the same percentage as the older guys. So the union's been working close, so every guy in the department has the same educational benefit. And that's part of the problem when people left before. They could go to other towns that had full Quinn bill. So it's not just the health insurance, it's the pay, the benefit package, and, I mean, you're talking about like a 10% raise. So now everyone has the same educational incentive benefit. The guys go on their own time, they pay for the schools themselves, there's no educational reimbursement or anything like that, so it's time away from their family. Everyone's busy, so.
So what's the nature of the expense then? If they're paying for it themselves?
So they get a percentage increase on their base salary,
I see.
depending upon what degree they earn.
Got it.
Another line item question I'm curious on is, how do you budget court time?
Sorry. It's forecasted. Like I said, crime has been about the same. The court budget has been about the same.
So it's basically historical
Yes.
cost?
I mean, obviously during COVID and certain things, they had pushed a lot of court off and things like that. So earlier in the year, once COVID had let up, obviously there was a substantial increase in court because they've been pushing cases for a long time. So.
Okay, I was just curious as to, because you don't know.
No, I mean, clearly
the
if-
future, other than forecasting. Right?
I mean, I believe we have somewhere, and this is an approximation, and, I believe we have like approximately 1,600 open criminal cases right now, on top of a double homicide that's going to be going to trial in the near future.
Any major capital expenditures for our fleet or otherwise coming up in fiscal year 2026?
Every year, 3 cruisers are part of the capital purchase.
Okay.
We also put in for, I don't know if it's next year or the year after, I have the paperwork here if you're interested, but service weapons, once they hit the 10-year mark, they're recommended to be replaced because we want to make sure they work. So that would be another capital budget request.
I only had one other question for you, and is there anything that you would do differently with the budget process next year? I know we've had a lot of changes over the last several years in terms of the process and people and whatnot, and what would you do differently, if anything, next year?
I think next year the whole process will be started earlier. Like I said, there was some transition, so we got into the process a little bit late this year. But like I said, I think everyone on board everyone's on the same page. I mean, everyone obviously has dream budgets, but you kind of drill down to, especially capital budgets and things. The town was good enough to have a new police station, so we're very cognizant of what we ask for. In other words, capital budget, we've always been very diligent on like need only. Like for example, this year we got tasers, but they're at the end of life, so you can't. And as far as de-escalation, it's an unbelievable tool for de-escalation, but they're expensive.
So the network and communications that went from 37.5 to 53, is that part of that app,
No, that's part of the, with the EOC not being able to pay for some of those things, we had to pay for those things under the police department budget.
In reference to your question about the app, that was only $6,000, and I purchased that through a grant.
Any other questions from anybody else on the board? I'll just leave it with this. I mean, this is, I appreciate it coming in. Definitely at least from my purview, sounds like a bit of a success story.
Thank you.
Probably not a bit of a success story, definitely a success story. The fact that you continue to remain fiscally prudent with the number of officers you have and the resources you have, and the fact that you're going for accreditation this year, just totally voluntary and putting yourself up for a higher level of service, and all the while doing it and maintaining the level of safety that we have in our town compared to the rest of the nation. I mean, words can't give enough credit for what that takes, and I think that's fantastic. So I just say, keep it up.
Thank you.
You're obviously,
Very proud of it.
you're obviously
Both of
doing
you
a very
with
good
your,
job.
Thank you very much.
your extended years. It's good to see how you're transitioning to the newer requirements of police work compared to
morale.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's big.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Do we want a 5-minute, anybody need a 5-minute break before we go to the? Okay, all right, we're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break. I just realized I probably should have, I think if I was doing it procedurally the right thing, we would have called for a vote to take a 5-minute break, but
That's all
I
right.
think we'll forgive you.
hope
Yeah,
nobody
seconded.
turns me in on that one.
Aye.
Okay, so next up, again, I just wanted to say that appreciate the police department coming in here and speaking with us. Next up, we're speaking with the fire department, so thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us tonight. We have Chief La Silva. Pronounce that right?
Yep.
We have
Deputy Corbo.
Deputy Corporal.
Deputy Smith.
Deputy Smith, great. And gentlemen, when you speak, if you could just make sure that your microphones are close to your mouths, appreciate it. So we'd first like to begin, and again, questions are going to be very similar to as we just rolled through with the police department, but obviously focused on fire and rescue. One of the things that, we'd start with the police department, very interested in is understanding how we measure what the level of services that we've had to provide in the town, right? And obviously, in the case of the fire department, it's fire and rescue. I'd like you to, we're not experts up here. At least I don't. Somebody could say that. No, you are. But could you help walk us through like some of those statistics that you do pay attention to, and do you think that would be important for us as the advisory board and the town to understand in terms of the amount of services that we have to provide? And how that compares against years past as well.
Sure. Well, first, thank you for having us here. So it's good to see everybody. And I asked Deputy Chief Corbo and Deputy Chief Smith to join me because we work as a team. And this is our senior leadership team here. So they may jump in on a few things. And but yeah, so to start off, to answer your question, in the last 5 years, our call volume has increased 13.76%.
That's in the last 5 years, you said?
In the
I'm sorry?
last 5 years, yeah. Which is a pretty good jump. Some days you feel that. They're running a lot more often. Getting multiple calls at once, things of that nature.
Is there any commonality to when or that trend? So you said it's lifted by 14% on for over the course of 5 years. Is that attributed to something in particular that you've
I
noticed?
think
or is it-
like Chief Tavares touched on, just the increase in population and, the other thing too is the complexity of these calls are going up to, with some of the medical calls we do. There's really no rhyme or reason to how and when we get these calls. It can be, hours of boredom and seconds of fury. But on average, those are the numbers we came up with today for the past 6 years. We do about 70% medical calls and about 30% fire calls, which is probably the average you'd find in most of our surrounding communities. One's no more important than the other. We take every call as it could be, the tough one. And we have a great department. We have great men and women that work for us and are dedicated to public service. They're dedicated to being above themselves. And
What's the head?
but so right now we have 49 uniformed personnel.
Same as police.
Yeah, same as the police. Yep.
It's easy to remember then.
Yep.
Do you have any idea of how much we spend on average per citizen if you were to break that down?
Yeah,
Or
based on-
even number of whatever the statistic is that you think would be? What's that?
It's about the same.
Well, the number of people, but in terms of spending, is it pretty close?
You know what? I didn't hear what Chief Tavares came up with his number was, but based on the number that we came up with, based on just our year-round population, we didn't factor in any summertime or anything like that. But is 24908 is what?
Close,
Yep.
277.
yeah.
Yep. So we're about the same. And those are the statistics that we like to look at the most and see, where we're trending, what type of calls. We really didn't break that down too much. We just came up with that 70-30. But we can further break down calls into what types of calls you go, what time of day, certain areas of town. We track our data through a software system called ESO, which is really, we upgraded to that. When did we upgrade from Firehouse?
Probably almost 3 years ago.
Yeah, and it's been fantastic. It's
what is
been a great,
ESO.
ESO?
yeah, it's been a great tool for us to track data and, extract it. It's a lot easier to extract data out of this system than it was our old one, which always comes handy when it comes time to write grants or for presentations, so.
And you'll have to apologize me for, I'll have to apologize. You have to forgive me. Don't apologize me. You have to forgive me for asking a rookie question here, but fortunately, I haven't had to spend much time calling 911. If I was to call 911, who's picking up the phone? Is it somebody at the
So again,
fire and rescue, the police department, or where does it get routed to?
yeah, it's a good question. It's a common question. So a lot of stuff that Chief Tavares and Captain McDonough touched on, I don't want to refer to them a lot, but I probably
It
will.
overlaps, sure, yeah.
So he mentioned the 911 grant. We get a portion of that money to do what's called EMD, Emergency Medical Dispatch, which is basically the person that answers the phone when they ask fire, police, medical, where the medical and the fire. It gets transferred to us, and all of our personnel are trained and credentialed as emergency medical dispatchers. So when you answer the phone, first of all, when you call, it goes to the primary public safety access point, or PSAP, which is at the police station. They then triage that to us, and we handle it from there with over-the-phone instructions and dispatching our resources. So that's pretty much the short of what happens when you call 911.
Is that part of a Plymouth County system? or is
It's
that
not.
to-
No, but there is a county system, and I was going to get to that in a little while, but it's not. It's all contained in Marshfield. Yeah, so we handle the 911 calls, and then if we're busy and we can't answer a 911 call because we could get multiple calls or we have a big incident going on, that it automatically transfers to our backup, which is Duxbury, and they'll take the 911 calls and handle it from there. That's never happened in my time, but that's just a fail-safe.
And what is our firefighters, what percentage of the 49 uniform personnel, is that basically everybody within the department, or is that's,
That excludes me.
excuse you, okay, gotcha.
Right.
So it's everybody but yourself, okay.
Yep.
And how does it work with the fire department? Is everybody's a fire fighter,
So
or
we're
is there-
cross-trained, yeah, over my career, over 25 years. I came on in 2000 when the town took over the ambulance. So they hired 8 to 10 paramedics, and Tommy was there before me, so he remembers that, before the ambulance. But everyone's cross-trained now. We have, how many medics do we have? I didn't write that down.
46.
So 46 paramedics, and
Another
then
40.
we have some personnel that are at what's called the basic level, where they're EMT basics. And so, yeah, everybody's pretty much cross-trained, and it, over the years, that's the progression it was going. So that's where we're at with that, and it's very fortunate. We're one of the few communities that run double paramedics on an ambulance, which is,
Meaning 2 paramedics?
well, two paramedics, but in some instances, in some places, they'll run a paramedic with a lower level of care, like an EMT. We don't do that. We run 2 paramedics, and then pretty much the whole shift is paramedics. So when we show up, you're going to have 2 to 4 paramedics there to care for you.
And you'll have to, again, forgive me for another rookie question. I got lots of them. So
That's all right.
what's the difference between a paramedic and an EMT?
Skill level. So where EMT paramedic in Massachusetts is the highest level that you can attain in EMS, or emergency medical services. So paramedics do anything from intubate people, give medications. We can decompress someone's chest, read EKGs. And then there's 2 lower levels below that, the lowest being the EMT basic, which they are basic life support. A paramedic is advanced life support.
So you have 46 paramedics?
We do, yeah.
So do you rotate, like, every shift is, you have different people every shift as, like,
There's 4
operating the
shifts.
ambulance?
Yeah, there's
Operating the-
4 different shifts, and each day they get an assignment from their shift commander. Each shift has a shift commander, which is a rank of captain. And they give out the assignments, so they can rotate from being on what we call fire alarm or dispatch, to the ambulance, to being on the fire engine, the ladder truck.
Okay,
So
does rotate.
they're able to, yeah,
That's great, okay.
You said 46 out of 49, so.
yeah.
What's the average tenure of our uniformed personnel?
So our average tenure is about 14 to 15 years.
And what's the annual turnover look like?
Annually, not much. I mean, we have people that move on to go, like Chief Tavares was saying about the police officers, they may want to go to an urban community where there's more action or opportunity. They may want to go to another department where the pay and the benefits entice them to go there. But in my time here, I've seen people come and go, but it's not it's not a revolving door.
And do you have any idea of what the average salary is for our uniformed folks?
Sure, so
I can take that if you want, Mike. The
okay.
firefighters' salary, top step firefighters, we have 33 firefighters. It's $71,358. That's the top step. We have, right now, I believe we have 3 people that's in the step program. The step program is when you come into the fire department, you start at step 1, and every year you get a raise until you get up to step 7. So it takes you 7 years to get up to a full firefighter step.
So after 7 years on the force, your salary, part of your compensation is around $77,000
After
currently.
7 years.
After
71,
7.
yep.
And that's just for firefighter. So when you promote to lieutenant, from there up to deputy chief, it goes as a percentage. There's no steps with the following ranks. Something to add to what Tom said on that base salary is we add in specialty pay and, education and things like that. So the base salary is closer to about 95
Okay.
with all that added in. Say your EMT or paramedic, whatever percentage that is, that rolls into that, and that's what you come up with.
And what percentage of our uniformed personnel live here in Marshfield?
So we came up with it's about 39% live in town.
Really?
Do most of them live in just the nearby adjacent towns, or do we have folks that are doing pretty long commutes?
No, they live pretty much in the surrounding communities.
Is there a restriction on how far
There
they
is
can
through
live?
civil service, yeah. I believe it's 15 miles.
It's 15? Okay.
Yeah. And that's usually from door to town line, or as the crow flies. So,
Okay, so you don't have people coming in from Braintree, for example?
no, there's some people
Braintree
that,
might be within that 15 miles. But
Yeah.
most people, I would
Okay.
say Plymouth, and a lot of it's driven by cost. We got a lot of young guys in the department, and of course, Marshfield's a pretty expensive town, Sherry can tell you, to live in.
It's
$722,000, right,
more
for a
than-
starting home?
It's actually
Yeah.
more than
Well,
that.
not a starting
The
home.
average cost.
The average cost of a home?
It's about 750 in Marshfield, yeah, right now.
So that drives a lot of people, and they go, a lot of newer firefighters live in Plymouth. It's a little cheaper to live there. Yeah, not so much Carver, but Plymouth is probably most of the outside border where people live.
What's the starting salary? Just curious. If
so
it's,
step one,
56.
Basic, I guess.
sorry, I didn't.
It's all right.
I didn't write the stuff down, but, where is, 55,712. That would be step one.
And then they have, okay, up to step 7 is 71. That's just basic.
Yeah.
77
77?
for step 7,
Isn't
right?
it? Isn't it 71?
77?
7 steps, there's 7 steps.
There's
And
7
it's
steps, but when you get to the last step, the step 7.
Goes to 71. Now, that's just
Oh,
your basic
71,
salary.
okay.
That's not including your
51,358.
stipends. And
Yep.
like for everybody who comes into our department is a paramedic. So they get close to 16% on top of their base salary to be a paramedic.
So they have to be a paramedic to be
They
on
do.
the department. Okay, that's a requirement.
It is. That's what we look for when we call to civil service for a hiring list. We ask for a list that has all paramedics.
Okay, that's great.
And do we outsource any of the fire and rescue functions to neighboring towns?
Well, no.
Okay.
We do what's called mutual aid. We have mutual aid agreements set up with our surrounding communities through Plymouth County. And they're mostly automatic responses. So I guess, to put it in a fire term, if we have a fire and we go to a second alarm, we're going to call Plymouth County and say we're striking a second alarm, and there's predetermined resources that we're going to get. Okay, on the medical side, which we do more frequently, is ambulances, and they're more fluid because we're going on those calls more each day. We call Plymouth County, it's called Plymouth County Control. It's the county dispatch center, and we say, Marshfield, we're requesting a mutual aid ambulance to, our town's broken up into 3 districts, and that's all down there. So they have that, like a drop-down shot that you say, Marshfield's looking for a mutual aid ambulance to their District 1, which is like down around Bear Rock.
Okay.
They automatically are able to see which towns they're gonna go to, and then they call and say, do you have a mutual aid ambulance available for Marshfield? And that's how, and all the meanwhile, while the fire engine for that district, each district has its own fire engine and firehouse.
Okay.
So it may be an extended time before that ambulance gets there to transport, but our engine is gonna respond there, which all 3 of our engines are Class 5 ambulances, which means they're at the advanced life support level. So they're gonna get there with all the equipment, they just can't transport. So they can stabilize a patient well ahead of whatever the ETA for the ambulance
Oh,
is.
that's great, okay.
How's the morale on the fire department? And I guess one of the other kind of supplemental questions I have to that is, obviously, I know we're aware there's been some leadership changes in the fire department over the last several years and whatnot, and how's the kind of the rank and file, if you will, weathered most of those changes?
Yeah, there's no secret, there's been some turbulence and your morale's a fluid thing. Everyone is all happy at the same time. I can tell you from what, we do within, as a team, we've been really trying to communicate and push forward that sentiment. Like, we want to hear from you, you're going to hear from us, and I think that's gone a long way. We just had a renovation done on the second floor of the firehouse. They were able to put in 6 single stall bathrooms and showers. They're beautiful. It took a little longer than we thought. That didn't help with the morale side of things, but now that that's coming around,
It's picking up.
it's coming. It's great. And
What's great?
the
Morale,
the
the attitude.
facilities and
Facilities are great. Okay.
yeah, and I think that that's kind of easing a little of the tension that was there. And we work. It's something we try to work on every day. I've been there where my morale's been kind of tanked, and for different reasons. And I think it's trending in the right direction, though.
Is there 2 or 3 things that consistently are impacting morale on a regular basis? It sounds like morale's kind of been a little bit of an issue. Anything that's like a constant recurring theme that is,
You can take a stab at that.
If I can jump in. The last year has been tough because Mike has been acting chief for a long period of time. And because of that, we couldn't hire from below, so we're short on people. The guys, we've been busy. We're very busy with the ambulance. And we've had some fires too, but they can get burnt out. Not so much burnt out, but sometimes they don't eat lunch till 6 o'clock at night. They're working very hard. And because we don't have that people in the back to relieve that overtime that they have to work, if we don't fill an overtime shift, we have to force guys to stay. And that's pain, that hurts sometimes.
how many open
So-
positions do we have right now?
Right now, we have 3.
We have 3. Yeah.
But two are being filled as we speak. We have 2.
We have one in the fire academy in Bridgewater right now, and we're in the process of onboarding 2 new firefighters.
And will that relieve some of the, or a big part of what's, yeah, okay.
Yep.
Because it sounds like a big part of it is just folks are worn out, working.
Yeah.
If I can
and-
say, I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
That's one of our goals. One of my goals when I took over as chief in January was, it's no secret that, there's, some people are unhappy. And we want to just make it a great place to work, and we want everybody to, want to come to work, want to stay here. So we're focused on that, but it doesn't happen overnight. And, it's just the steadfastness of sticking with it. Some people are never going to be happy, but, for the most part, it's a great department. We have excellent men and women that work there, and like I said, they're dedicated. So,
That's good.
And all I was going to say is, as bad as the morale was at one particular time, it never spilled out to calls into the street. And that says a lot about our men and women.
That's good.
I know that can be, yeah, I get it, that can be tough. And I appreciate you saying that too, right? It's, they're, at the end of the day, everybody's focused on the job. those impacts on morale can be tough, especially if you carry them around with you on the job. But I appreciate that everyone's remaining focused and whatnot, because I know that that can be challenging. So I appreciate, and especially if you're pulling long hours, time away from your family, all of that. That's a lot. It can be.
Those are the sacrifices everybody talks about. You know, you make the sacrifices on the job. Well, that's what these men and women do. And
Yeah.
the holidays, the family gatherings, you know.
And they're 12-hour shifts, right? Are they 12-hour?
24-hour
They're
shifts.
24-hour shifts, so they're very long, okay.
Do you know on average, I mean, just ballpark the average number of hours that a firefighter puts in per week? Just on average, you know, high level.
Well, they do two 24-hour shifts rotating, on a rotating schedule, so like Deputy Corbo mentioned, we have a minimum amount of people to be on duty, so if no one is willing to come in off duty, the people on duty are staying.
I guess that's the question I'm asking. So it sounds like 48 hours in a week minimum,
Uh-huh.
and then you have overtime on top of that. So what does that work out to be?
I would say anywhere from 48 to 72 hours a week, maybe.
There's some people who love the overtime. And-
Sure.
And they take it all the time. There's other people who just don't want to do the overtime. So it varies in that type of thing. I mean, there could be guys doing, we have an 11-man shift during the day with, sometimes we only have 11 people available to take that shift for the next, you know, when they're coming in. So with one person out, that's an overtime. And if that doesn't get filled, we have to hold people. But, so to answer your question though, there's people that would come in for overtime anytime there's an overtime. So that person's overtime hours are a lot higher. And there's some guys that just don't, they'd rather just work their 48 hours and be done with it, you know, so,
Say 72
But-
hours is a lot. That's
yeah,
it's 10-hour days every single day of the week, no weekends.
yeah. They do it.
Can you briefly walk us through services that are provided for the fire department and how, in terms of mental health and other things that are focused on, programs that are focused on protecting their well-being?
Sure. Again, to reference Chief Tavares, a lot of the things he said, you know, the town has the employee assistance program, which is confidential, and that's always available. After any challenging calls or you know, that would, you know, we get them help to what's called critical incident stress debriefing teams. They come in and you know, they have a whole protocol that they go through and what to watch for, and so we utilize that. You know, if it's something high profile, we don't have to have anyone ask us or say they need it. We bring them in, and we make sure that they're available and they're covered. And then, you know, just following through with them and checking in on them, checking up, you okay, anything you need, you know, watch for certain traits that, you know, they might be having a hard time. And then, you know, something else, like we also have the fitness incentive, like Chief Tavares was talking about, and so that, you know, that's a good thing to try and incentivize a lot of people to work out, stay in shape. And it does, we get most of the department that partakes in it, so. But probably one of the biggest things over the past few years that is cancer in the fire service. It's become a big initiative to bring down incidents of cancer. And things we've done is we've purchased special gear. They're called extractors that wash out turnout gear, because when we're in an environment like that smoke and everything that's off-gassing gets into that gear, and you're still wearing it, and if you don't wash it properly, you're putting that right back on and exposing yourself to those chemicals and carcinogens again. So we bought special, you know, washing machines for turnout gear and dryers. And, you know, like at the last fall town meeting, we were appropriated $75,000 for, to purchase PFAS-free turnout gear, which is those are carcinogenic chemicals that the gear was being made of. So that was being exposed, firefighters are being exposed to that just by wearing it. So we're hopefully sooner than later, maybe by the end of next year, we'll be one of the first departments to have all our members have one set of PFAS-free turnout gear. And, that's something we're striving for. We really would like to see that yeah, that's pretty
How much
much.
does that cost for just one set of gear?
3,700?
They bumped it up to about, I think it's close to 40 or 4,000 for just the jacket and pants.
Really?
And how many do you have now?
Well, so everyone has to have a set,
Oh, okay.
right? What we consider a set, a coat, pants. A full set is your coat, pants, boots, gloves, hood, helmet. We're just going for the coat and pants of that whole ensemble to be PFAS-free. So we try and have everybody have two sets of turnout gear so they can rotate them. So if you go to a fire and you get all that soiled, you can come back to the station, throw that in the extractor, and then throw your fresh pair of turnout gear back on the engine, and you're good to go. And the lifespan of turnout gear is about 10 years. That's usually the recommended. So hopefully we'll have everybody have one set within the next year or two, and they can take their gear that they have now, use that as the backup. And
How much is the full set if the coat and hat, coat and?
you know what? I don't have that number, but it's expensive.
It must be expensive.
For a helmet,
Now it's like $400.
yeah, gloves, the boots.
Went to a couple
Up over
hundred.
5,000 now.
It's over 5.
Yeah, because the boots themselves are about 400, helmets about 500-600.
So that's for when they're out fighting a fire, okay, so.
That's for any, structural, it's for structural firefighting and being in what we call IDLH, immediate danger to life health. That's when they'll have their air pack on, which is considered PPE.
Right.
So, yeah, it's pretty much the most important thing we have to keep us, to keep safe in that environment.
And so the fire department purchases, and is that uniform, would that be under the uniform line? I'm just curious, what line is that in?
That came from the special town meeting.
Oh, so,
Okay,
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
How many engines do we have?
So total, we have 5 fire engines. We have 3 what we call frontline fire engine pumpers, 1 per district. We keep 2 in reserve. We have 1 currently right now that's, that had to be shipped out to be repaired. And like I said, they all are registered Class 5 ambulances with the Department of Public Health. And they are responsible for an area,
This is the engine or the ambulance?
the engine.
The engine. And how many ambulances do we have?
So we have 5 ambulances. We have 3 that we run, and we keep 2 in reserve.
And so when do outside ambulance companies come into the equation?
After our first 2 ambulances go out, we hire back coverage, somebody to come back in because we cross-staff the engine and the ambulance. So somebody that might have been assigned to the engine would have to go onto the ambulance to complete that crew. So we bring back in coverage, and then in the meantime, usually it's got a lot better with the coverage coming in to headquarters to staff a 3rd ambulance. But if in the meantime they're not there and we can't get that out the door, that's when we call for mutual aid.
And that's through a contract that we have with other, with ambulance companies, providers?
No, we
It's
don't,
an agreement.
What's that?
It's just a mutual aid agreement. with the
we
other
don't
towns.
have any agreements with the ambulance companies, like for-profits, right? We're entered into these mutual aid agreements with the other communities.
And then I'm just curious how it works, because I know that if right now I called an ambulance, I'd get a very big bill from the insurance company. I'm just curious how that all kind of goes through. It sounds like you probably then take that cost of moving that ambulance, and that gets, I'm just curious how,
The cost to run it and the billing, we could sit down and go over the billing aspect. I didn't really get prepared for that.
no, I'm just curious, because I know that, it obviously costs money to maintain these things, right?
Yeah.
And to buy new ones and everything else like that, to pay our folks, and, but I also know that if somebody needs ambulance service and has health insurance, then that health insurance company is going to absolutely charge a pretty significant sum. So I'm curious, if the insurance company says, hey, it's $1,000, who's that $1,000 going to? Is it going to the town of Marshfield? Is it going to the insurance company, and they just, sort of profit for them, or where does it go?
Yeah, well,
Also, the microphone. So, per one of the Mass General laws, it actually goes, the way it's all set up is it actually goes back into the general fund. So if it's a town of Marshfield ambulance that transports, we fill out the paperwork, comes to me for review, goes off to billing. The billing company bills that patient. That money then goes back to the town. If we do have to rely on mutual aid, we do lose that revenue. So like if Duxbury came in, transported Duxbury bills, Duxbury gets the money.
Sure.
So it goes back into the general fund, and that's per, I don't have the reference, but it is per MGL, one of the MGLs. So-
Okay, but the point is that when somebody utilizes ambulatory services, and their insurance company charges them, the insurance company's turn around and writing a check to the town of Marshfield, is my understanding.
Yeah, it
Okay.
all comes back. The billing company does come with a cost that's figured into the budget,
Yep.
but the majority of the money comes back. I don't have the exact number or the percentage or what they charge, but the majority of the bill does come back into the general fund.
Do we have an idea of how much that is per year? Now I'm curious. Off the top of your head, in terms of how much we recover from insurance companies for ambulatory services for folks that use it.
It's anywhere from 1.6 to 1.8 million a year.
It's impressive that you know that off the top of your head.
That's what we did, yeah.
And typically the concession or the contingency is about 5%. That's what the ambulance billing company charges on recovery. So whatever they recover from the billing, just keep in mind that the rates, so as a provider, as Marshfield is a provider of this service, there's negotiated rates with each insurance company. So just because they are billing for, let's say, an ALS, which is an advanced life support run, and let's say that bill is around $2,300, depending on the insurance and the coverage, we're not guaranteed to get the $2,300 back. We're guaranteed to get back what's negotiated. And that could be at a significantly reduced amount of money. So 1.8 sounds like a lot, but when you consider the number of ambulance runs that they're providing on an annual basis, the recovery, I would say, Chief, you might correct me on this, typically the recovery is around, I would say, 65% of what's billed, 65-70% of what's
Yeah.
actually billed.
Yeah,
65% of our runs are Medicare and Medicaid, and that's a maximum of $750. So, and then the 35, what you referred to, or referred to as full freight, so those are people that have, better insurance.
Okay, but out of the 13.7 million or thereabouts in the budget for the fire department, about 13.7, 1.7. About 12% of that or so is returned to us, the town. Okay.
And it goes into the general fund, which then funds the rest of the budget.
Okay. Perfect, thank you. No, I think that's important to know and understand. You've obviously seen the 2026 budget. Can you tell me the process? Is it similar to the police? Is it different? How have you?
This is
Step
my
in like-
first time doing it.
Okay.
So it was a collaborative effort, and like was mentioned before, you go in there with your your wish list, and it has to be. You just come to what it's going to be, and that's pretty much how that goes. From being my first time doing it, so I'll get better at it.
Is there anything that's not in the budget right now that you think should be there?
There is some training that we could use funding for like some unfunded mandates, like active shooter. But we can always use more help, and when we can get there, we can always use more people. So that would be something that down the road I'd like to see happen.
Is active shooter training something that we need? It sounds like the answer is yes from what you just said.
Again, it's an unfunded mandate, and
Mandate, so it's required that we have this training for our
it is
firefighters.
through the Office of Emergency Medical Services, which is what governs our emergency medical services throughout the state.
And with this budget for fiscal year 2026, will we get that training for our firefighters?
We'll have to try and work that out with what we have, and
Is it budgeted for in the fiscal year 2026 budget?
we didn't put in for it. No,
Why didn't you put in for it?
it was something I overlooked, and
How much is it?
what would we have for a number for that? About 25,000.
Yeah, it was up around 20,000, somewhere 18 to 20.
Yeah, anywhere between 20 to 22, 25,000.
So is that something every firefighter is required to take when you have okay.
Yeah.
So it's,
The
so
EMS
it's
part.
roughly, pardon me?
The EMS part.
Just the EMS active shooter, or is every,
We do training with the police department at the schools. We're now, if there is an active shooter at the school, our people are required to have vests and be prepared to go in and clean up, help the people that were injured if they were.
Do we have that equipment, or is it just, so we have the equipment, but we don't have the training?
We do, well, we have, it's a mandated training every year. We already been through the training, so we're already ready to go right now.
But what is the training that the chief's referring to that we don't have, that we should have included in the budget, but we overlooked?
It's required training every year. It's a yearly training that we do with the police.
So we're supposed to get the training again this year, and we don't have the
Which we
funds for
will.
it?
We will still do it. We'll manage it out of the budget that we have.
Okay.
We're not going to not do it. We have to do the training, so we're not going to not do it.
it's required, so.
Is there anything else that was left out of the budget by accident?
Just to go on that, much like Chief Paris, it was unfunded mandate, but it was absorbed into the cost, so it was something that we never budgeted for in the past, so we just absorbed the cost of it. We've been doing it for, I think, 2 years now?
This will be our third year.
Yeah, so 2 years now. Last year it came out of the overtime budget, and this year, like I say, it's just an unfunded mandate by the state that a lot of departments are kind of in the same boat of how do we get it? And everybody figures it out, but it's whether or not it's going to strain something else on the budget.
It sounds like it definitely will strain something on the budget, because it's not even in the budget, so something else will have to give.
So you said previously it was like the overtime.
Mm-hmm.
But it will get done.
It'll get done.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you manage it within the business, within your.
But ideally, it was.
I mean,
We have
ideally,
managed it the
if-
last couple of
That's your wish list, you didn't get, that particular incremental amount wasn't on the wish list, but you've been able to handle it
Pretty much,
within
yeah.
your budgets, whether it's overtime, reductions, or what, okay.
Is-
pretty much similar to any other.
Is the town's eligibility to participate in the 17 grant programs that are affected by the MBTA's Community Act impacting any activities of the fire department? Any grants or anything else that we,
Well, we did, two grants that we've applied for, yearly, or annually, is through the Department of Fire Services or the Fire Marshal's Office. One of them is the, firefighter safety equipment grant, which allots communities a certain amount of money based on the population, for safety equipment. And we sit down together and figure out what do we need, what could we put this towards, and,
and I'm sorry to interrupt you, is that the same one that the town of Duxbury had an
Yep.
issue? It sounds familiar. Okay, and
Yep.
and if I remember correctly, the governor said that that was being restored at least until this July or whenever, sometime in the summer, and so they try to figure this out?
correct, so it was withheld. We got a letter from the marshal's office that, well, first we got an award, we got the award, and then they said, you're not eligible. And they reversed course on that, so long story short is we are getting that award that we applied for this year of $19,000. And then the other one is student awareness of fire education or SAFE, which we apply for every year, which we use for our fire safety program or fire prevention, which is in October. We do an open house, we go into the schools, and we go off a curriculum about fire safety to each elementary school and the Council on Aging. So that we haven't heard from, if we're gonna receive that or not. That's about, what, $8,000 or so?
8,400.
Yeah, so that's something that we rely on. Haven't heard if we're.
How much was that? I didn't.
8,400.
8,400, yeah. So we haven't heard anything on that. The firefighter safety equipment grant, the fire marshal's office just released another, what was it, 1.6 million?
Yeah.
Which was completely unexpected, but we got the notice of funding opportunity and we jumped right on it. So we have another, how much was that for?
92.
Another 9,200. So we have that in the pipeline right now, and I don't know if they're gonna, I can tell, but, and then outside of that, no, I haven't heard of anything else that we'd be denied. We do apply for a federal grant every year through it's called the Assistance to Firefighters Grant through FEMA. Well, that won't affect,
How much is that?
what do we go for this year?
We're eligible up to $1 million.
Per year?
Yeah, we applied for a little over 600,000 this year.
And we've got it historically?
We've had, not every year, it's a competitive grant, but we have gotten awards over probably, what, the past 6 to 7 years. Yep.
Can I just go back, that $9,200, that's the firefighter safety equipment grant, is that the same as the other 19,000?
Yes.
Okay, so this 9,200 is in addition to
Yes.
the 19, so you're
A
talking
totally
20
separate application.
Separate applications?
Yep.
Okay, but just all goes to this, okay. So you're talking 28,200 then, that we're in limbo for those, plus the 84.
Yeah.
One of the other ones, just to keep in mind too, so I know that the chief already touched on the ones that directly affect the fire department too, but just like Chief Javara said, we heavily rely on state funding for our EMD certifications as well. So that's one that's at risk. That's what, 72,000? I think 72,000 a year. So that's to pay for everybody because it's required.
What's the name of that grant program, sorry?
What's the grant that they do?
EMD.
Well, I don't know if that's the name, but it's EMT certification.
Massachusetts 911.
Yeah, it's through the Mass 911 system. So, and the police department applies for it. We get a portion of it to cover our end, where we kind of share that responsibility. So, but that's to cover everybody for the required continuing education as well as their recertification. So,
So So you're talking $100,000 right off the bat, plus that 600,000 that you don't know, a little over 100, with that 72. 108,000.
And I noticed that training costs are pretty low. They're only about $4,800. That doesn't strike me as, and I don't mean $4,800 per firefighter, but $4,800 in total. Why is that so low? Is there some sort of a classification issue with the accounting, or how does that work?
Well, let me tell you. Well, I think it kind of goes back to like what Captain McDonough was saying about line item budgeting. That's in our salary portion. So we if we pay overtime for training, it just comes out of our regular overtime budget, and that I guess is kind of like a backup. Like he was talking about two pots of money. That one we can use for training if we need to, but we usually pay out of our regular overtime line item.
But that's for your, I understand that. That's for people and the cost for them to actually work the hours, right, to go to training. But it says there's only $4,800 for training and fire rescue. In fact, historically, it hasn't been much. I'm just curious, like where, I mean, obviously we train our folks. And
I think historically that line wasn't always there. It's within the past 3 or 4 years that line was added in.
so where's that cost layered into then? If it's not there, it must be somewhere else. I mean, you do training more than, you do training where is there training for firefighters where they're using facilities that we have to pay for outside of the town of Marshfield, and or special classes that our folks have to go to maintain EMT certification, or?
So speaking on the fire side of it, we're actually, Massachusetts is kind of unique in the country. It's one of 2 states that the fire academy, the continuing education for firefighters, is actually free of charge to the students. So to send somebody, like, I have a class starting this week, and it's free of charge to me. So I go and I take it, but I don't have to pay for it. Whereas, like, just throwing out there, Alabama, one of the classes is $500 per student. So where in Massachusetts, if you took that same class, it's free of charge. So on the training line item, a lot of the cost to take classes and certifications, it's more just to pay the people to take the class. And that's why most of the money is kind of incorporated into the overtime budget, because the class doesn't cost anything. And that's been that way for a long time. So the training aspect is more for training items around the station. We do a lot of in-house training, so that money's there if we need equipment to do that, like a smoke machine to smoke out of a building. There's door props to simulate forcing a door or anything like that. So that's where that kind of, not blurred lines goes in. We're very beneficial to kind of have the State Department of Fire Services too, so.
Okay, so the state is providing that at the state's cost,
Yeah,
not ours.
it's through a whole separate kind of government agent. It's Department of Fire Services that's paid through by insurance companies and taxes, and they run the whole state. They have 3 campuses: Springfield, Stowe, and Bridgewater, and then they'll actually host classes. Like the one I'm taking this week is in Holbrook. So.
And does that include, does the fire academy also do classes for EMT paramedic services? Or?
Small amount of them, but it's through they only do like first responder stuff, which is the lower level. Where we're ALS, paramedic certified, there's so many things that we have to keep up on, ACLS, CPR, and we have to do a recertification every year, which comes, it depends on, we have in-house people to do CPR, but the refresher we have to outsource to an EMS company. So that's a private entity too, so.
So there is training costs outside of,
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that one, I forget how much that one was this year.
is it more than $4,800?
I think it was 20.
No, it's about half. It was
About half of that.
About half that,
25,
yeah.
28.
You're basically just paying for the instructor to come in. We still do it at our facility,
Yeah.
firehouse.
Sorry, I sound like I'm beating the dead horse here. It's
No, that's
just that
okay.
it-
That's
it
fine.
seems, it would seem like we'd have a lot of training costs. I mean, like you look at the police department, obviously, and it's pretty substantial, right? It's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and yet the fire department has $4,800, so it
Yeah.
kind of strikes me as like, where is it?
It's one of those
gotta
things
be
that-
there somewhere.
Really, like, just kind of always traditionally was on the lower end because, again, the biggest cost is overtime. We're lucky enough, we do a lot of in-house training. So the shift commander or one of the training division members will actually hold a lot of training in-house with ladder drills, search and rescue drills, and all that stuff, so.
This is probably for Sean. Could you help me understand how would you like to see a scenario where a fire personnel goes to a training seminar that costs $1,000, and he's going overnight, and he's got $700 worth of expenses, and back here, we're spending $500 to cover his shift. Is that 3 line items in the budget, or is it all in overtime?
Really, well, probably this is Meg's area as well, but, in essence, it should be probably recorded on 3 different lines. One being the overtime, which would be in the regular overtime to cover the vacancy that's created by this person being out off-site on a training. So you have the overtime component, or you also have their time while they're at the training, so you have a full-time salary component, and then you have the reimbursable, which would be the expenses. So that could be covered under training, or it could be covered under another line if the department deems they want to use another line to cover that expense.
Okay, so that's kind of where, it seems like the overtime could be a catch-all for a lot of this right now.
Well, I think right
I mean,
now.
is this something that both you and Meg, is this the way you want to see it, or is this something that's in the transition of, let's get these bucketed in the right places?
To a degree, we would like to see things marketed a little bit better, because the chart of accounts is something that was taken from a different town in the conversion, and the chart of accounts could be readjusted to be a little bit more descriptive, or better descriptions for how the expenses are. In terms of, like, I don't think that there's anything grossly off, because, I mean, they're recording their payroll and expenditure. Any payroll or expenditures that come through, it's charged to an account that's reasonable. We would like to see it a little bit tweaked, sure.
Okay.
And just if I may, Mr. Chairman, so the treasurer and the town accountant have really invested a lot of time and effort to get everything accounted for and paid for in the right line item. So we've made some great strides in the FY '26 budget. Will be, you're never really perfect, but will be near perfect probably.
Oh, I know there's been a lot of effort in process improvement and getting,
No,
like you
absolutely.
say, getting your chart of accounts more acclimated to Marshfield. I know you probably grabbed a standard set from another project with Munis that they just dumped into your system. So I know that takes some time, but I think there's probably some opportunity to see some synergy across all the departments and say, this is what this bucket is for next budget season, this is what this bucket is for next budget season. So don't put this in there and don't put that in there. Just all part of the improvement process we're seeing.
It's a big overhaul, though. Yeah.
But training, just to get back to your training, if I may, Mr. Chairman, training, the majority of the cost of training is the overtime cost, whether it's in the police budget or the fire budget or DPW budget. When you have to train, our department heads are great, our chiefs are great about is the training that you can do, during someone's shift does save you on the overtime. Sometimes you can't always do that, so you have to pay the overtime. If it's not done in the fire station, it's not done in the police station, they have to travel somewhere, then there's those expenses for their travel. We do reimburse people for mileage if they don't use the town vehicle.
Sounds like you do a lot of in-house training, so we're not flying people all over to Vegas for a convention.
No.
When does our CBA expire with,
Our CBA expired on June of 2023.
so we haven't been on a CBA?
I'm sorry?
We're not in a CBA right now, we're not entered into a CBA, so we're But our firefighters are unionized or they're not?
They are.
They are?
Yes.
But they're not in a CBA
Well, they're in negotiations or,
since June 2023?
yeah, it's at an impasse right now. But yeah, they are unionized.
Is that impacting the morale?
I believe it does have an effect on it. It affects everybody's pay, so
Yeah.
that,
I know it sounds like a silly question, but I just want, I mean, seems like morale is one of our challenges that,
yeah.
and that seems, especially since it's been June 2023 and going almost 24 months without any resolution there, it's got to be difficult.
I believe it is, and I believe that has an impact on the morale. And like I said, we're trying to do what we can from the inside to keep morale up.
Who handles the CBA negotiations for the town? Do you know?
The town's labor council
Okay.
and the union's bargaining unit.
Town's Labor Council.
Mr. Gavin?
Mr. Chairman, I'll jump in and answer those questions. So I'm the duly officer that represents the select board, so it's myself and Labor Council negotiates the contract. I don't want to get too far into negotiations because under 150E, we're not really supposed to be discussing, but there is an impasse. They've been at the table a number of times. We got to a point where it's exhausted. They want to go to the JLMC. We had a initial mitigation, and could be a few years, at least a year before we have any resolution from the JLMC. But all of our unions are offered the same package. Fire department chose not to accept that package, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Marisco. Do we have any major capital expenditures for our fleet and facilities that are coming up in fiscal year 2026?
We're putting in as a capital item for a new ambulance, which they're tough to get right now. They're 2 years out if you order one. So we'd like to get that first and foremost. We were able to get 2 brand-new ambulances through ARPA funds, which we just took delivery of in early fall, and those took 3 years to get here. So that's coming up, and then looking down the road, we're going to need to talk about replacing one fire engine. So, but for this year is it was the ambulance.
How far out are you looking for that, at that fire engine?
The fire engines are the same, anywhere from 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years
have
life-
it built out, yeah.
So is the lifespan of the fire engine, what's the lifespan of?
Usually anywhere from 8 to 10 years.
Okay.
We usually get about 10 years out of them before we have to start looking at what we really want to do with them. They run a lot of wear and tear. So, yeah.
Thank you. I only have one other question for you, and it's the one that I last left with the police department is, you've been through the budget. You've been through the budget process now yourself, first year. Anything that you change about the process next year?
For myself, I'd take a closer look at some things and just try and really get a better grasp on it. And but I wouldn't really change the process. It's it's a team effort, and yeah.
Well, I would let you know, our role as the advisory board is to not just serve as an oversight, but if we can, be of assistance. So you get some pretty smart people up here, and not that we're experts in fire and safety or whatnot, but if there's anything that we can do to assist you in future years as you're getting up to speed on that, let us know. That's what we're
I
here for.
appreciate that. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. It helps.
Of course.
Helps to know that support's there, so.
Any other questions from the board?
No, I just want to say I think we have a great fire department.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Thank
do.
you.
I do.
No, I agree, and first of all, I got to tell you, I mean, again, what you three and the folks that that work under your command go through on a day-to-day basis, the work that they put in. I mean, it saves lives. I mean, we all know that, right? But it's not a figure of speech. It's literal. It's literally what they do. And they're under again, I'm preaching to the choir here, but under a tremendous amount of pressure in a very acute way in every job that they show up for, every emergency that they show up for. And then on a daily, weekly basis, and the amount of hours and time that they have to put in for and those pressures and whatnot. With that being said, I really hope that we can solve some of the morale challenges. And those can be the toughest ones to solve, most of all, right? Because I'll tell you that the town supports our firefighters. I mean, without question. I know the people up here do. And we want to see everybody taken care of, and we want to see people, we want to see that morale high, right? Not just because, because not for anything superficial, but because it matters, right? I mean, we want you to, and we hope that everybody knows how much the folks in town really do appreciate what you do on a daily basis. And it's not just a figure of speech, it's not just something we say because it sounds nice, but it's the truth. Because when we do need somebody because something goes wrong at 3 a.m, you guys are the ones that literally come to our aid. There's nobody else. It's you. You in the police department. So I hope it goes without being said that is insanely important. So I hope that there's more we can do to help with the morale situation. I don't know any of the details about the CBA negotiations. I would just say that I really hope that we're able to find a way through that very soon, because if that's a morale killer, then that's something that needs to be addressed for the well-being of our firefighters.
And, I know it doesn't spill out, but, the community, too.
For the community, that's right. Yep, because obviously, their morale is going to show forth I get it that they don't bring that with them, but at the end of the day, we're all human. So, we don't want to be lugging that around with us in any job that anybody does, whether you're a teacher, firefighter, police officer, whatever, right? So I hope that we can find ways to get through some of those challenges. I think that's super important. I think that we would all agree on that.
Absolutely.
But again, thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time tonight. I'm sure it's been a very long day for you, on top of everything else, to come in and speak with us. I appreciate the time, and please let the folks at the fire department know how much we appreciate everything that they do day in and day out for our safety. Appreciate it.
We will, and thank you. Thank you for the questions and the opportunity to be here.
Of course.
Wasn't so bad.
What were you expecting?
I just had one quick question I should have asked early on, sorry for my ignorance. The police log that's on the town website, does that include the calls that you take?
It doesn't. They do go to, the calls mix, they go to calls with us. So their calls,
It
are there.
could involve you, but it's not,
Right,
I don't see it listed fire, police.
Right.
They go ambulance.
yes.
So your calls aren't logged on the public website?
No, but when we do log our calls
Yeah.
and track them, and yes, yeah.
All right, thanks.
I have a question that doesn't have anything to do with the budget. I'm just curious. Do you offer CPR classes, or is that strictly through, I guess it is the American Red Cross?
Yeah.
Does the fire department offer, to the public, CPR classes that people could pay for?
We do. We're kind of in the middle of scheduling that and figuring that out, like a format that we can do, that's kind of more reliable, rather than just trying to get it
Consistent.
together. Yeah, consistent, yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, as you were talking about some of these costs and whatnot, that would I guess it is budget related, but just a thought.
Right, yeah. Well, give us a call, and we'll see if we can go and work something out, so.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you
Very
again.
much.
Have a great night.
So I think we're at the end of the night now. Again, I appreciate everybody putting in the time to be here tonight. Next meeting, 6:30, here at the Chambers next Wednesday.
Sure, Pat.
I'd like to put forth a motion to close our meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Oh, we're all seconding.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, good night.